Hello, my name is Hasmik Movsisyan, and this is the presentation of my action research project implemented in the framework of Master's degree in Social Emotional Learning. The title of my action research project is Mindfulness as a Tool, Strengthening Inhibitory Control in Preschoolers Through Self-Awareness. The inspiration to join Maisel program and choose this topic in particular started from my childhood experiences and fully blossomed when I had my own children. I have grown up with stories of my grandfather, the Armenian genocide survivor. I have lived through hunger and freezing cold, war, destruction and loss. Although I have never given up. When my daughter was in first and then in fourth grade, she got bullied by a classmate. Although we trusted the school and teachers to take care of her those 7 hours a day when we couldn't be around, she did not always get the help she needed. It was then that my journey in the United States school system began. I started volunteering in my child's school to give her the daily support she needed. It was then that I started wondering how we adults can help our children so they would be able to afford being kind and caring, put away their shields, and yet remain invincible. I also wondered what capacities should we adults have so we would not fail on our children. I started this program so I would learn not to fail. I chose mindfulness as a topic of my study so I would teach my son, my daughter, and my prospective students how to be strong and yet kind, how to be confident but still capable of questioning their actions and making right choices. Why mindfulness, you may ask, and what is mindfulness? Mindfulness is basic human ability to be fully present, aware of where and what we are doing and how we are feeling at the present moment of time, and not overly reactive or overwhelmed by the environmental and internal stressors. Mindfulness is a built-in ability every human being possesses. It is, though, more accessible and beneficial if practiced regularly and intentionally. Mindfulness practices are a healthy way to cope with stress and enhance self-awareness. Mindfulness has proven by a plethora of research to improve emotion regulation, increase self-awareness, lower reactivity of amygdala, reduce anxiety, stress and depression, ensure quick recovery from pain, increase confidence, boost the immune system, significantly increase concentration, increase ability to relax, improve sleep, and decrease job burnouts. Mindfulness was conceptualized by Jon Kabat-Zinn in 1970s when he developed a method for treating chronic pain and stress at the University of Massachusetts Medical School. This was an 8-week training program titled Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction Training. Kabat-Zinn not only drew on Buddhist tradition, but equally on scientific tradition he was trained in. Thus he created acceptability of his work in the world of science and medicine. In a book titled Emotional Intelligence: Why It Can Matter More Than IQ, Daniel Goleman proposed as an addition to SEL in the future to include mindfulness as an obvious way to promote self-awareness along with emotional management. He mentioned that from scientific perspective this strengthens cognitive control. A well-known psychologist, Paul Ekman, with support received from Dalai Lama, created Atlas of Emotion, inviting everyone to engage with this interactive atlas to understand deeper the emotions and use it in different aspects of life. He invites educators to use this application in their classrooms, and he invites them to research it, to implement research, to reveal the benefits of this interactive tool. And it was thanks to this tool that I understood what specifically I wanted to target in my research. For many students, school is the only place to feel safe. For many other students, school is on contrary associated with stress, starting from separation anxiety and fear of uncertainty at early age, and academic and social pressures, biases, tests, homework load, safety issues, etc. for elementary, middle, and high schoolers. The pandemic, new school safety protocols, and new reality ground it all. Modern schools do not always have counselors or psychologists to support students. Some schools have to share a counselor. The schools that are staffed with counselors still cannot provide appropriate level of services because of disproportion between staff and student population. The student-to-counselor ratio recommended by American School Counselor Association is 250 students per counselor. The new national student-to-counselor ratio is 424 to 1. Based on data from the Department of Education's National Center for Education Statistics, the student-to-school counselor ratio for the year of 2019-2020 in the state of Illinois was 592 to 1. According to Paul Ekman, human emotions unfold on a timeline. The timeline begins with a trigger that initiates an emotional experience and ultimately results in a response. There is a very short pause between the trigger and the response to it. The assumption of this research was that if children adopted mindfulness and practiced it daily, they would learn how to use the short pause on the timeline between the trigger and the response to it, to use mindfulness to calm themselves, to silence the amygdala, and promote development of the executive function. Therefore, the purpose of this research was to create and implement lessons with mindfulness and SEL activities built in daily academic instruction in a pre-K classroom to discover how mindfulness would impact the inhibitory control of 4- and 5-year-old students. The overarching question and 2 sub-questions of this research are: how do daily mindful practices impact inhibitory control in preschoolers? Which are some age-appropriate mindful practices for 4- and 5-year-old preschoolers? What are some productive ways to incorporate mindfulness in daily academic instruction? To answer the questions of this study, I examined 3 mindfulness curriculums. I chose the following topics for the lessons: Introduction to Human Brain, Introduction to Mindfulness, Introduction to the Science Behind Emotion, and Basic Emotions and Coping Techniques. The first segment to implement mindfulness in SEL was morning circles. 3 times a week, students would color the emotion they were having that day, discuss why they were having that emotion, and brainstorm on how to help their peers to cope with strong emotions. We would finish morning circle with mindful physical exercise. The second segment was story time. We would read a story, discuss the perspectives of the characters, think of one time we felt that way, and then finish it all with guided breathing. The third segment was centers. At this time, I would circulate between different centers, engage in conversations with kiddos, or observe the interactions and take notes. Every time, one of the centers would have arts or crafts activity connected with the book we read. During transitions, we played mindful games. Before transitioning to the classroom from outdoor recess, we would pause and listen to the sounds around us. In my research study, I used the following measurement tools. For emotion recognition and emotional vocabulary, I used emotion cards, I feel daily activity, and observational and anecdotal notes. For self-awareness, I used a prediction of actions and prediction of feelings activities. To identify and measure any changes in behavior, I used pre and post teacher and teacher assistant questionnaire and teacher assistant surveys. And finally, to measure inhibition, impulse control, I used the HTKS test, which means head, toes, knees, and shoulders, and it's meant for early childhood. Emotion recognition was measured by observational notes. Here it was important for the students to recognize and name the feeling without identifying themselves with it, so they would learn to observe their emotions. We can see that from pre to post implementation there is a significant growth. Here is the results of pre and post implementation of HTKS test. We can see that the students had significant growth in impulse control. The orange represents the pre-implementation data and the yellow the post-implementation, and we can see that the students had 55% growth through 6 weeks. The pre- and post-implementation questionnaire and survey showed that the behaviors in the classroom became more manageable, and the teacher wrote in the comments that students became more capable of recognizing and naming their emotions, and the teacher assistant said that the children started practicing breathing as an effective tool for calming down. Two outcomes that haven't been targeted by this study were empathy and perseverance. I'm planning to touch these two topics in the future when I start my doctoral degree. Another plan of mine is to publish a SEL book of poetry. I'm going to include all the poems that I have written for the purpose of this research study. And for the dessert today, I've prepared one of the poems, and I want to thank Tracy Watson, my good friend, very, very good friend, for making the illustration to it. There was a hippo, very smart. He loved recess and gym and art. He loved to read and write and count. He loved his school inside and out. He loved to memorize new words, his number facts and names of birds, all cities, countries, towns and states, and even all his friends' birth dates, and recipes of yummy drinks. How could he memorize all things? Remember, Hippo on the campus used his amazing hippocampus.